Alright, I think I'm just going to give these mating surfaces a once over real quick. Same thing with this e-brake cable. As you can see, it's pretty rusted in there. And then I'm going to put some silicone lube. And that way everything will have a good mating surface and slide nice and easy.
Calling Dr. Devin. Please report to caliper surgery. Dr. Devin.
In order to take apart the rear caliper on the V6 Mazda 626, forget this larger slide pin. You got to get at this cap. There we go. This little guy is going to be 10 millimeter, and it's going to be on there good. Alright, this is your guide pin that actually holds the caliper to the bracket. Once you get this guide pin out, the whole thing should just flip right open. Like so. It's just this one guide pin. That's it. Cool. And it fully releases, which means that this guide pin in here is fully lubricated and working normally. Now when you see something like this, it's missing the spring right here on this side. As you can see, it allows the brake pads to wear unevenly. You might be inclined to go with the C-clamp method, which is to clamp this off around here and then wind it down so that it pushes the piston back inside. That's not going to work on here. You cannot use a C-clamp on this. You have to loosen this adjuster bolt. That's a 14 millimeter. Copper washer. Now inside of here is a space for a hex key, and I've been using a 5/32. I don't know what that's going to be in millimeter, but it's been working for me, no problem. And it will unscrew the caliper. You can move the caliper up or down as a caliper adjustment. When it comes time to install your brakes with your brake pads and everything and your rotors and everything, when you go to clamp that on there, you're supposed to move that piston back out. But in order to get that piston in, you cannot use a C-clamp. You have to unscrew it. And as you do that, you'll notice brake fluid will come out because we're compressing the piston. Alright, that's about as far as it'll go. There is a max travel involved. That's about max, which is pretty much flush. Actually, I think I can get it to go inside below this lip here. But I don't want to force it. Not quite yet, because we're still doing uninstallation. Next, cleaning your hardware. Take these little clips off, grind them down, get all that brake dust off. Now the most important surface to grind is this top lip here, and the face and the seat. We got our hardware nice and cleaned off. Go over with a hand brush, just knock off any big chunks of loose rust. This one's really not that bad. You want to brush where your clips are going to ride. That's the whole name of this game, is we want our brake pads and everything to be perfectly symmetrical on the bracket, on the caliper, in the rotors, and on both sides of the vehicle. Now if I had more time, I would take the wire wheel to this and shine this entire assembly up and then paint them and make them look all pretty. But since they're going behind stock OEM wheels and you're not going to see these anyway, it doesn't make a bit of difference. First thing, probably the easiest thing, go ahead and take the bracket and install the bracket. And these are pretty good screws. These look almost brand new. The replacement calipers from the junkyard. These are junkyard bolts. The bolts that were on this car are stripped, filled with anti-seize. It's not the way you want to do it. Don't fill. Alright, you only need to put a tiny little amount. You don't need to fill your bolt threads with anti-seize. Now if you have rust on your guide pin, go ahead and clean that rust off, sand it if you need to, and then we're going to re-lubricate it with silicone. But in the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and install the bracket first. And make sure you do not cross-thread these. That would be a really bad day. This the rotor will ride right in the middle of this channel. There's a little channel that goes right like that, right in that channel. That's kind of a pain to work with though. Now we got our rotor sitting right in the middle of that channel. Just get them hand tight. You don't want to tighten them down right now, just in case you need to take this off for whatever reason. Now we have our caliper bracket on. Our rotor is inside of the channel for the caliper bracket. Next we're going to lube up our guide pin. It's silicone lube. It's called Sil-Glide. It's not as good as the stuff that Eric the Car Guy gets, but you know what? Conveniently available at just about any automotive hardware store. I'm not a sponsor for them. I'm not a proponent. It's just silicone lube. It could be a blank white bottle to me. I don't care. I just want the silicone out of here. I don't give a crap who makes it. Now, if you've had to sand these and there's a whole bunch of rust, The more lube you can put on there, the better. That's my opinion. More lubrication isn't going to hurt anything. Not enough will definitely hurt something. You'll seize your calipers if you don't put enough. So it's better to put too much than not enough, and that's just my opinion. You can do whatever the hell you want. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and lube up the boot. Not going to hurt anything. It's not going to hurt the boot because it's not a petroleum based product. It's silicone based. That will actually help lubricate it, moisturize it, and prolong its life to help prevent it from dry rotting. Alright, now that we're all lubed up, e-brake cable's in the way. Alright, and then we can just hang the caliper just like that, and we'll be ready to put in our brake pads. I'm also going to lube up this guide pin on the bottom, on the front and the back. That's where the brake pad is supposed to slide on that little silver bracket. That little defect is causing me not to be able to install my brake pads, so I have to grind it until it matches that shape, which is a nice square cut. And that's how it's supposed to go. All that over a little defect. That sucks. And the back is pretty much just the same process. Just kind of fold it on over there. Slap it in there. Good to go. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like that. Now our caliper is compressed because we used the adjuster bolt. Brake pads are in. Oh, spring. Don't forget your spring. They go like that, don't they? Don't they? Correct me if I'm wrong, if those stupid little springs aren't supposed to go between those two little notches and not behind the clip. It doesn't tell you in the factory manual exactly where those little bastards go. I imagine that's where they're supposed to go because there's a little extra notch, a little cutout there for it. I think that's good. If I have to revisit it, I will. It took me a while of wrestling with the emergency brake cable. Push the cable in from the back on the bracket mount and then push this spring down and hook it in there. It's a pain in the ass. It would take me way too long to film that, so I just had to do it. It took me like 5 minutes. So now we have the e-brake cable, and I've gone ahead and lubed that up. I've also lubed up this brake line connector. I think now is a good time to go ahead and get off that old brake line. And there's going to be a copper washer on both sides of this banjo bolt. Copper washer on top here and right here, so make sure that you don't forget that. Now I'm going to leave that in place when it comes time to install the new one. Now this banjo bolt, as you can see, has a hole in the middle, so fluid flows through the bolt itself. When you go to tighten this down, you're not going to know which direction that hole is pointing. So what I do is I'll just take my Dremel. I actually have two little notches and a line. Alright, so now when I go to tighten my bolt, I'll know exactly how far to take it before the line's up. And since the fluid flows directly from this hose straight into the bolt, I want to get those notches lined up directly in line with the hose. Something like that. It looks pretty darn close. That way, fluid goes down the brake hose and into the caliper as fast as possible. Probably one mistake that a lot of guys are making when they do this. Well, my brake engagement doesn't feel like it used to. I'm not getting the stopping power that I used to. Well, that's because the hydraulic fluid can't get down into the caliper as fast and as efficiently as it used to. Make sure those holes line up. And if they don't, add new crush washers. That way all of your torque specs are going to be just fine. I can go ahead and undo that pinch line and we'll be looking just fine. Alright, now that I got that started, should be able to just take a hammer and we're good. Now we're going to have to do the same thing to where the e-brake bracket is on the back of the strut. This is right behind the strut and hard to get at. Oh man. That one is hard. Ain't gonna lie. That one is hard. We're good. Okay, so now we take our 5/32, I don't know what it is in millimeter. We'll stick it in the back of that hole for the adjuster bolt, and we'll start spinning that down. Alright, so now I am tightening the caliper. What you can't see is that the caliper is actually slowly being screwed into the brake. You have to tighten it as you walk the rotor back and forth, and when it starts getting tight, that's when you stop. See, like right there, I can't spin it anymore. So then you just walk it back just 1/3 of a turn after this gets tight. And that should be good. Now because I don't have the lower spring in here, that might affect the scraping sound that you hear. I'm gonna have to find a replacement spring for that, and I do want that in there, otherwise you will get uneven pad wear if you don't have both of those springs in here. But for the time being, I'll just button everything back up, torque it to spec, and I'll post all the torque specs for you for every bolt. That's it. That's all there is to doing the V6 rear discs. We're making some progress on Chloe's car. Pretty happy. We'll be moving on to the fronts tomorrow. We're gonna call it a day because I'm done. Day 8. Done.